The first time I realized I didn't exist to Alexander in public, it was at his birthday party. Not in some dramatic, scene-stealing way. No argument, no fight, just a slow, quiet understanding that settled in my chest and refused to leave. In private, Alexander was perfect, thoughtful, soft in ways he never let anyone else see. He'd pull me close when we were alone, trace lazy circles on my arm while we talked about nothing, tell me I made him feel calm, safe. I felt chosen. But that night, standing in his friend's crowded apartment with a cheap drink sweating in my hand, I was nobody. I watched him move through the room like he always did. Confident, easy smile, everyone drawn to him. He laughed loud, hugged people, soaked up attention like it was oxygen. I stayed a few steps behind, waiting for something. A glance, a touch, some quiet acknowledgement that I belonged at his side. Nothing came. When someone asked how he knew me, Alexander barely hesitated. "Oh, Christopher? Yeah, we work together. Work together." I felt my stomach drop, even though I'd half expected it. I smiled anyway, because that's what you do when you're trying not to look hurt. The guy nodded, already distracted, and the conversation moved on without me. Alexander didn't look back. We'd been seeing each other for 6 months by then. 6 months of late nights at my place. 6 months of whispered conversations in the dark, of him kissing my shoulder before falling asleep, of texts that said I miss you already 5 minutes after he left. 6 months of him telling me he wasn't out, that he needed time, that things were complicated. I told myself I understood. That night, I drifted to the edge of the room, pretending to scroll through my phone while I watched him from a distance. He looked so comfortable, so himself. Like this was the real version of Alexander, and the one I knew, the quiet, affectionate one, was something he only allowed behind closed doors. At some point, he brushed past me to grab another drink. His hand grazed my lower back, quick and subtle, like a secret only I was meant to notice. "You okay?" he murmured, not meeting my eyes. "Yeah," I said automatically. He smiled, relieved, and walked away again. That was the moment it hit me. I was being loved in fragments, given everything in private, and nothing where it actually mattered. Later, when the party thinned out and we finally left together, Alexander reached for my hand the second we were outside, fingers lacing with mine like nothing had happened. "You were quiet tonight," he said. I looked at him under the streetlight, at the softness in his eyes that no one else ever saw, the version of him that felt like home. "Yeah," I replied, "just tired." He squeezed my hand. "Come back to mine?" And I went. Of course I did. Because loving Alexander was easy when we were alone. It was everything else that was breaking me. Alexander's place always felt like a different world. The door would close behind us, the noise of everything else shut out, and it was like he could finally breathe. He kicked off his shoes, loosened up, turned into the version of himself I knew best. The one who leaned his forehead against mine in the hallway, eyes closed, like the day had been too heavy to carry alone. "God, I needed that to be over," he muttered. I didn't ask what that meant. I already knew. Inside, "You were great tonight," he said softly. I laughed under my breath. "I didn't do anything." "Exactly," he replied, like it was a compliment. That stung more than I wanted to admit. At one point, he looked up at me and said, "You know I care about you, right?" The question caught me off guard. I nodded, even though my chest felt tight. "Yeah, I know." He smiled, relieved again. That same relief I'd seen earlier at the party when I told him I was okay. Like my reassurance allowed him to keep everything exactly as it was. The city hummed outside the window, distant and indifferent. "I don't know what I'd do without you," he whispered into the dark. I stared at the ceiling, wondering how someone could make you feel so essential in private and so invisible everywhere else. The next few weeks followed the same pattern. Nights together, mornings apart, texts filled with affection, plans that always stayed vague. If I suggested going out somewhere public, a movie, a bar across town, there was always a reason not to. "Too crowded. Someone from work might be there. Can we just stay in?" I started noticing how carefully he curated his life, how neatly I was tucked into the parts no one else could see. One evening, after he canceled dinner plans because his coworkers had spontaneously invited him out, something in me finally snapped. "You ever think it's weird," I said, trying to sound casual, "that none of your friends know about me?" He stiffened beside me. "It's not like that," he said quickly. "You know it's not." "Then what is it like?" I asked. Silence stretched between us. His jaw tightened. "I'm just not ready," he said, quieter now. "Why do you keep pushing this?" I turned to face him. "Because I'm tired of feeling like a secret." He looked hurt, defensive. "That's not fair, Christopher." The way he said my name, like a warning, made my stomach twist. "I'm not asking you to come out to the world," I continued. "I'm asking to exist. Just a little." He rubbed his face, frustrated. "You don't get it." "Then help me get it," I said. But he didn't. Instead, he pulled away emotionally and physically, like he always did when things got too close to the truth. He kissed my forehead, told me he loved what we had, asked me not to ruin it. That night, lying alone in my bed after he left, I finally admitted something to myself I'd been avoiding. Love shouldn't feel like erasing yourself. And no matter how perfect Alexander was behind closed doors, I was starting to realize that might never be enough. Things didn't end after that conversation. They never do. Not right away. Alexander still came over, still texted me good morning, still kissed me like he meant it. And I let him because part of me hoped that naming the problem had somehow loosened its grip. That he'd wake up one day and decide I was worth choosing out loud. But something had shifted. I started noticing the little things I'd ignored before. How he never used my name around other people even when he could have. How he angled his body away from me if someone he knew passed by on the street. How his hand would drop from mine the second we stepped into public space. It wasn't cruelty. That almost made it worse. One afternoon, we ran into one of his friends at a coffee shop across town. Someone he'd sworn didn't matter. Someone who didn't ask questions. I was mid-sentence when the guy walked up, and Alexander talked right over me. "Alex, didn't know you came here." "Yeah," Alexander said easily. "Just grabbing coffee. I stood there, cup in hand, suddenly very aware of how silent I'd gone. The friend nodded at me politely. "And you are?" Alexander hesitated, just for a second, but I felt it like a punch. "This is Christopher," he said finally. He, helped me with a project." "Project?" I smiled because that's what I always did. I made myself small so Alexander wouldn't have to feel uncomfortable. The friend chatted for another minute, then left. The silence afterward was unbearable. "You didn't have to do that," I said quietly. Alexander frowned. "Do what?" "Erase me." "That's not fair," he said, defensive already. "You know I didn't mean it like that." I looked at him, really looked at him, at how tense he was, how tired, how afraid. "I'm not mad," I said. "I'm just exhausted." That night, for the first time, he didn't stay over. We started drifting after that. Not in a dramatic, explosive way. More like two people pretending not to notice the widening gap between them. Our conversations stayed shallow. Our silences grew longer. Even when he held me, it felt like he was already halfway gone. Then came the night he invited me over, unusually serious in his tone. "I need to talk to you," he said. I knew what that meant. My chest felt hollow before I even arrived. We sat on opposite ends of his couch, space between us that used to be filled with warmth. He kept rubbing his hands together, a nervous habit I knew too well. "I can't keep doing this," he said finally. "Not like this." I nodded slowly. "I know." He looked relieved, and heartbroken, and guilty, all at once. "You deserve someone who doesn't hide you," he said. The words hurt more than if he'd said nothing at all. "So do you," I replied. We didn't fight. We didn't cry much. We hugged for a long time, holding on like we were trying to memorize each other. When he kissed me goodbye, it was gentle, final. Walking home alone that night, I felt strangely calm. Empty, yes, but also lighter. Loving Alexander had taught me something important. Being chosen only in private isn't being chosen at all. And no matter how perfect someone is behind closed doors, I finally knew this. I deserved to exist everywhere. I thought the hardest part would be losing Alexander. Turns out, it was learning how quiet my life felt without him. For weeks after we ended things, I kept reaching for my phone at night, kept expecting his name to light up my screen with something small and intimate. "Did you eat? I can't sleep. I miss you." My apartment felt too still, like it was holding its breath, waiting for someone who wasn't coming back. At first, I told myself I was fine. I went out more, said yes to drinks with coworkers I barely knew, filled my calendar with noise so I wouldn't have to sit alone with my thoughts. But Alexander was everywhere. In the corner of my couch where he used to sit. In the mug he liked that I never quite put away. In the part of me that still wondered if he'd miss me enough to change his mind. The worst part wasn't that he'd hidden me. It was how normal it had felt while it was happening. One night, a few weeks after the breakup, I ran into him again, completely by accident. A mutual friend's apartment, someone's promotion party I'd almost skipped. I spotted him across the room instantly. Same posture, same familiar way of laughing with his whole body. He looked good, relaxed, like he'd settled back into the version of himself everyone else knew. He saw me a moment later. Our eyes locked. For a second, the room fell away. No noise, no people, just us and everything we hadn't said. He hesitated, just like he always had, then walked over. "Christopher," he said softly. "Alexander." We stood there, awkward and exposed. No script this time. No private bubble to hide inside. "You look good," he said. "So do you," I replied, meaning it and hating myself a little for it. Someone bumped into us, laughing, and Alexander instinctively stepped aside to give them space. The old version of me would have shrunk back too. This time I didn't. "So," I said, "how've you been?" He shrugged. "Okay, busy." "You?" "Better," I said, surprised to realize it was true. He smiled at that, but there was something sad behind it. "I'm glad." There was a pause. He glanced around the room, then back at me. "I think about you a lot," he admitted. I nodded. "I know. He stopped himself, jaw tightening. "I wasn't ready." "I know that too," I said gently. "But I am." The words felt solid. Real. Someone called his name from across the room. He looked torn for a moment, then met my eyes again. "You deserved better than what I could give," he said. "Yes," I replied. "I did." And for the first time, he didn't flinch. We didn't hug, didn't exchange numbers, didn't promise anything. He walked away, back into the crowd, and I watched him go without that familiar ache in my chest. Later that night, walking home alone, I realized something else. Alexander had loved me the only way he knew how at the time. Quietly, carefully, in shadows. But I had learned how to love myself out loud. And that made all the difference. After that night, something in me settled. Not healed, healing is messier than that, but steadier. Like I'd finally put both feet on the ground instead of balancing on hope. I stopped checking Alexander's socials. Stopped replaying old conversations in my head, wondering what I could have said differently. I even packed away the mug he liked, not because it hurt too much to see it, but because it felt like closing a chapter instead of lingering in it. Life didn't suddenly turn cinematic. No grand rebound romance. No instant glow-up montage. Just space. And in that space, I started noticing myself again. I signed up for a gym near my apartment not to punish my body, but to feel at home in it. I cooked actual meals instead of ordering whatever was fastest. I lingered in bookstores. I went to a small bar alone one Friday night and realized I didn't feel lonely. I felt curious. That's where I met him. His name was Daniel. He spilled half his drink reaching past me at the bar and immediately apologized like it was a personal failing. We laughed, talked. Nothing dramatic. No lightning strike. Just an easy conversation that didn't feel like it was hiding anything. At one point, he asked, "So, are you here with someone?" I hesitated for exactly 0 seconds. No, I said. Just me. He smiled. Good. Not good for you. Not that's okay too. Just good. We didn't rush anything. We went on actual dates, public ones, coffee shops, walks through busy streets. He held my hand without scanning the room first, introduced me to his friends without qualifying who I was, said my name like it was something he was proud to say out loud. The first time he kissed me in front of other people, nothing inside me tightened. No fear, no instinct to pull away. I realized then how much I'd been holding my breath before. One night, months later, I ran into Alexander again. This time at a crosswalk downtown. No party, no buffer of people. He smiled when he saw me. Genuine, a little wistful. "Hey, Christopher." "Hey," I replied. He glanced at Daniel standing beside me, our fingers loosely intertwined. "This your boyfriend?" Alexander asked. Daniel looked at me, waiting, giving me space. "Yes," I said calmly. "It is." Alexander nodded slowly. "I'm really happy for you." And I believed him. As the light changed and we crossed the street, I didn't look back. Some people come into your life to love you in the ways they can. Others come to show you what you should never settle for again. Alexander was both, and I don't regret him, but I will never again be someone's secret. Daniel didn't replace Alexander. He didn't need to. What he did was quietly undo the damage I hadn't realized I was still carrying. Daniel was half asleep, his thumb tracing slow, absent patterns on my wrist. It should have felt peaceful, and it did, but something in my chest tightened anyway. "You ever feel like you're waiting for the other shoe to drop?" I asked suddenly. He opened his eyes, turning toward me. "About what?" "About being seen," I said. "Like one day you'll decide this is all too much." He didn't laugh it off, didn't reassure me with empty words. He just listened. Then he said, "Christopher, if I didn't want to be here, I wouldn't be." The simplicity of it hit me harder than any dramatic declaration ever had. With Alexander, love had always come with conditions. Timing, fear, circumstances. With Daniel, it just existed. No shrinking, no negotiating my place in his life. Still, healing isn't linear. A few weeks later, Daniel invited me to his company's holiday party. Big venue, lots of people, co-workers, friends. Old instincts flared up immediately. "You don't have to bring me," I said, trying to sound casual. "I'm sure you'll be busy." He paused, keys in hand, and looked at me carefully. "Why wouldn't I bring you?" I shrugged. "I don't know. Work stuff can be weird." His brow furrowed, not in anger, but confusion. "I want you there." That night, standing beside him while he introduced me, "This is my boyfriend, Christopher." I felt something inside me crack open, not painfully, relievingly. No one looked shocked. No one whispered. No one treated me like a liability. I realized then how much of my past relationship I'd normalized. How much I'd convinced myself was just how things are. They weren't. Later, when we got home, I sat on the edge of the bed, suddenly emotional. Daniel noticed immediately. "Hey," he said softly. "What's going on?" I took a breath. I was in a relationship before you, with someone who loved me, but only when no one was watching. Daniel sat down in front of me, hands resting on my knees. "That must have hurt." "It did," I admitted. "More than I let myself believe." He leaned in, forehead touching mine. "You don't have to earn space with me." That was it. That was the sentence I'd needed years ago. Loving Alexander had taught me what longing felt like. Loving Daniel was teaching me what safety felt like. And for the first time, I wasn't afraid of being fully visible. Not to him, not to the world. The last time I thought about Alexander, it wasn't with pain. It was with distance. Daniel and I were grocery shopping on a lazy Sunday afternoon, arguing lightly about whether oat milk or almond milk was superior. I caught our reflection in the freezer doors, him gesturing animatedly, me laughing, and for a split second, my mind flicked backward to all the moments I'd stood just outside someone else's life, pretending that was enough. The contrast was so sharp it almost startled me. "You okay?" Daniel asked, noticing my pause. "Yeah," I said, smiling. "Just happy." And I meant it. Later that night, we hosted a small dinner at my place. Nothing fancy. A couple of Daniel's friends, one of mine. Music low, wine cheap, conversation easy. At some point, Daniel slipped an arm around my waist while we were all laughing over something stupid, like it was the most natural thing in the world. No hesitation, no calculation. I felt solid, present. After everyone left, we cleaned up together, bumping hips at the sink, joking about who was worse at doing dishes. When we finally collapsed onto the couch, Daniel pulled me close and rested his head against mine. "You know," he said casually, "I talk about you all the time at work." I froze, not in fear but habit. "Good things, I hope." He laughed. "Only good things." I thought back to Alexander, to how being mentioned at all had felt like asking for too much. How I'd learned to soften my needs so someone else wouldn't feel pressured. Daniel never made me feel like my existence was an inconvenience. "I used to think love was supposed to be intense," I admitted quietly. "Like something you had to fight for." Daniel considered that. "I think real love still takes effort, just not suffering." That landed deep. Lying in bed later, staring at the ceiling with his arm around me, I finally let myself fully grieve what I'd lost. Not just Alexander, but the version of myself who'd believed he had to be hidden to be loved. I wished that version of me peace, because now I knew better. Love shouldn't make you smaller. It shouldn't ask you to disappear. It shouldn't only exist behind closed doors. I'd been perfect in private to someone once. Now I was choosing to be real everywhere.